Welcome back to Unlimited Recaps. Today we'll be diving into a horror crime film from 1995 titled Seven. The movie begins with Detective David Mills, a fiery and eager investigator, partnering up with William Somerset, a seasoned detective who's just a week away from retirement. From the get-go, it's clear these two don't exactly hit it off. Their first case together takes them to a grim scene, a severely obese man found dead at his kitchen table. At first, it's unclear if this was a murder or just a tragic accident, but when they notice the man's hands and feet tied with barbed wire, it's clear that someone intended for him to suffer. Somerset, ever the meticulous investigator, dives into examining the crime scene, while Mills can't seem to stop talking. Frustrated, Somerset tells him to question the neighbors, essentially sending him off to get some peace and quiet. Mills is annoyed, feeling like he's being dismissed rather than taken seriously. Later, as they ride together, Mills vents his frustration. He's eager to prove himself and wants to be treated like an equal. Meanwhile, forensic analysis reveals something horrifying. The obese man was force-fed for hours until his stomach literally burst when the killer delivered a fatal kick. It's now clear they're dealing with a murder. Somerset's instincts kick in. He points out how much time the killer must have spent on this gruesome act, suggesting it wasn't random. To him, this murder has meaning. He's convinced it's just the start of something bigger, a series of killings tied to a larger, twisted motive. The captain isn't fully on board with Somerset's theory and thinks it might just be a one-off torture case. Somerset, however, insists this isn't a good case for Mills to cut his teeth on, which stings Mills. He's already tired of being underestimated. Eventually, the captain sides with Somerset and reassigns Mills to other tasks. The next day, chaos erupts at the precinct when reporters swarm the building. Another high-profile murder has taken place, this time a well-known defense attorney. The word greed is scrawled in blood on the carpet, and the victim's wife's photo has been defaced. Somerset's almost out the door, literally, his name is being scrubbed off as part of his pending retirement, when the captain briefs him on the second murder. Despite wanting to leave the job behind, Somerset can't ignore this. What really piques his interest is a new forensic detail. Plastic bits were found in the stomach of their first victim. Returning to the obese man's crime scene, Somerset inspects further and discovers something chilling. The refrigerator had been moved, and behind it, the word gluttony was written in grease. Nearby, there's a note quoting John Milton, "Long is the way and hard, that out of hell leads up to light." Somerset realizes the killer is basing his murders on the 7 deadly sins. He tries to distance himself, planning to retire in 5 days, but the case starts to consume him. That night, Somerset dives into research on the sins while Mills reviews crime scene photos. The next morning, Somerset leaves detailed notes for Mills. By Wednesday, Mills moves into Somerset's office, and the two start working closely. Mills' wife Tracy invites Somerset to dinner, where the conversation shifts to marriage. After some lighthearted banter, the mood changes when they realize their apartment is above a subway line, which the realtor failed to mention. Somerset laughs at the irony of a detective missing such an obvious detail. Later, Mills shows Somerset a photo of a defense attorney's self-inflicted pound of flesh, accompanied by a note from the killer. The two struggle to understand how the killer left no evidence. Mills then notices a defaced photo of the attorney's wife with glasses drawn on it, leading Somerset to believe it's a clue. They decide to visit her. When they visit her, they ask her to study the crime scene photos for anything unusual. After a moment, she points out something odd. The painting in her husband's office is upside down. They carefully examine it but find nothing. Just as Mills begins to lose faith, Somerset discovers fingerprints on the wall where the painting hung. The lab processes the prints, and what they reveal sends chills down their spines. The prints are arranged to spell out "Help me." While waiting for a match on the prints, Mills and Somerset reflect on their work. Somerset waxes philosophical, describing their job as collecting diamonds on a desert island, hoping someone will eventually find them. Mills doesn't buy it and calls him out, pointing out how much Somerset clearly enjoys the thrill of the chase. By Thursday, they get a match, but Somerset is skeptical it's their killer. They head to the suspect's apartment with a SWAT team. What they find is horrifying. The man, their third victim, has been tied to his bed for an entire year, embodying the sin of sloth. Looking through the killer's photos, the detectives realize the victim's torture lasted months, with the man still alive but severely brain damaged and his tongue chewed off. The attending doctor notes the immense pain the victim must have endured before being found. Meanwhile, a news photographer arrives suspiciously quickly, frustrating Mills, who believes the police are leaking information for media attention. That night, Tracy calls Somerset, needing someone to talk to. They meet the next morning at a diner, where Tracy shares her fears about raising a child in such a bleak environment. Somerset offers her some advice based on his past experiences. Back at the office, Mills is on edge, knowing the killer is still at large. Somerset points out the killer's methodical, patient nature, but Mills remains unconvinced. Mills's offhand remark about a library card gives Somerset an idea. They visit the library, suspecting the killer may have researched the 7 deadly sins. Somerset bribes an FBI contact to get a list of who borrowed relevant books, and they find one name: John Doe. The detectives head to Doe's apartment, where a man holding groceries suddenly pulls out a gun and begins shooting. A chaotic chase ensues, with Mills getting knocked down and losing his gun. The suspect corners Mills, but to Mills' surprise, he spares him and flees. Back at Doe's apartment, a heated argument erupts between Mills and Somerset. Mills wants to break in, but Somerset reminds him they lack a warrant, and their presence is based on illegal information. To cover their tracks, Mills pays a homeless woman to fabricate a story for the officers about reporting a suspicious man in the apartment. Inside, they find a grim scene. Somerset spots cans of spaghetti and even a severed hand preserved in a jar, the one used for planting fingerprints. Mills discovers stacks of photos, including ones of the victims. Meanwhile, Somerset dives into the killer's diaries, filled with disturbing, chaotic entries. Suddenly, Mills shouts for his attention. It turns out the so-called news photographer who had been tailing them earlier was none other than John Doe himself. The investigators hit another roadblock. Their forensic team can't locate any fingerprints in the apartment. As they puzzle over their next move, Doe's phone rings. Calmly, the voice on the other end introduces himself. John Doe apologizes for hurting Mills during their earlier chase and taunts them, saying his plans have been accelerated, but assures them there's more to come. Saturday arrives with a gruesome lead from an S&M shop. The detectives discover a custom-made weapon Doe ordered, leading them to a horrifying crime scene: the sin of lust. At the precinct, Mills interrogates the brothel owner while Somerset talks to the man. He recounts how Doe forced him, at gunpoint, to use the grotesque weapon. Somerset grimly presents the man with a photo of the Theban, cementing the nightmarish ordeal. Later, at a bar, the detectives wrestle with the moral and philosophical implications of their work. Somerset reflects on society's decay, where cruelty and shortcuts prevail. He admits these harsh realities are why he's ready to retire. Mills pushes back, insisting on clinging to ideals even in the face of despair. Back at home, Somerset struggles to sleep, replaying Mills' words in his mind. Sunday brings another crime scene: the sin of pride. A woman was forced to choose between calling for help and living disfigured, or taking her own life with sleeping pills. On their way back to the station, Somerset admits he wants to stay on the case. If Doe completes his masterpiece, this investigation may never reach a resolution. Suddenly, at the precinct, John Doe turns himself in. Calm and composed, his shirt stained with blood, he catches the detective's attention. While Mills furiously orders him to the ground, Somerset observes in quiet disbelief. Doe is handcuffed and taken into custody. As Doe consults with his lawyer, the detectives argue over why he surrendered. They learn he meticulously cut off his fingerprints to avoid detection. He has no employment or banking records, but is clearly well-educated and affluent. For the first time, Mills and Somerset agree. Doe's lawyer negotiates with the authorities, revealing there are still 2 undiscovered bodies. The endgame looms closer. John Doe offers to lead the detectives to the final bodies at 6 p.m., but only if it's just the 3 of them. He claims to admire Mills and Somerset. He threatens to plead insanity if they refuse, promising instead to confess and plead guilty if they agree. Reluctantly, the detectives accept the terms. As the time approaches, Mills and Somerset prepare, wearing wires and body armor. The car carrying them and Doe is shadowed by a helicopter. During the tense ride, Somerset tries to glean more about Doe's psyche, but Doe dismisses it as irrelevant. Mills challenges Doe's motives, questioning his claims about morality. Doe counters, declaring that his actions are a statement against society's acceptance of sin. He confesses to finding joy in turning sins against their sinners, but denies insanity, insisting his work has a higher purpose. Doe's composure falters when Mills accuses him of targeting innocent people. With fervor, Doe declares that his victims are far from innocent, and his actions will be remembered. He points out that Mills is alive only because Doe spared him, a fact he wants Mills to carry for the rest of his life. Somerset remains calm, quietly assessing the situation. They arrive at an isolated area beneath towering power lines. The helicopters can't proceed further. The landscape is barren, with only a broken-down car and a decrepit trailer in sight. Mills retrieves Doe and cuffs him, leading him into the open field. At 7 p.m., a van unexpectedly approaches. Somerset rushes to intercept it, stopping the driver, who identifies himself as a courier delivering a package for Detective Mills. Somerset cautiously opens the box with a knife and recoils in horror at its contents. Meanwhile, Doe begins speaking to Mills, praising his seemingly simple life and his beautiful wife Tracy. Mills grows uneasy, confused by Doe's sudden interest in his personal life. Doe confesses that he visited Tracy that morning, attempting to play husband. When it didn't work, he took a souvenir of her head. Somerset sprints back, shouting for Mills to drop his gun, but Mills is frozen, demanding to know what's in the box. Doe calmly continues, admitting that he too is a sinner. His sin is envy. He envied Mills's life, his wife, and his unborn child. Doe cruelly reveals that Tracy begged for the life of her baby, shocking Mills, who had no idea she was pregnant. Somerset pleads with Mills to put down the gun, warning that killing Doe would complete his twisted masterpiece. Doe's plan is clear. He wants Mills to become wrath, the final sin. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Mills succumbs. He fires at Doe repeatedly, killing him and fulfilling the killer's ultimate design. Mills collapses emotionally, consumed by despair. As he is escorted away in a police car, the captain assures Somerset that Mills will be taken care of. Somerset reflects quietly. Quoting Hemingway, he remarks, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." After a pause, he adds, "I agree with the second part." Subscribe for more videos, turn on notifications, and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.